Here now is Dr. Walter Hoffman.
Hi, I'm a professor of that very boring subject over at Loyola next door to us. I've been a libertarian since 1964 when I was converted to that by Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard. The two of them sort of set me on the path that I followed since then. I was a candidate for New York State Assembly in 1972, so I'm one of the earliest candidates for the Libertarian Party. I understand that there are people here who are not that familiar with libertarianism, so I'd like to try to explain it. Libertarianism to me is based on two principles. The non-aggression principle, keep your mitts to yourself. The only legitimate interaction between people is voluntary consenting adults. Therefore, rape and murder and theft and all sorts of things like that would be ruled out of court. The other would be private property rights based on the Lockean theory of homesteading and voluntary trade, or any transfer of wealth that is voluntary, such as trade, buying, selling, betting, gifts, what have you. Now, this isn't really that radical. Most people, if you ask the next 100 people passing by, do you favor rape, murder, and theft, or things like that, they're going to say, of course not. The difference between most people and libertarians is that libertarians are very rabid about this, very serious about this, and apply it to everything. This is sort of like a litmus test that you apply to everything. And one of the things that we apply it to is government. And the problem with government is that it isn't really a social club. We haven't agreed to join it. And they use violence. They tax people and force you to do things or prevent you from doing other things that you would have a right to do if you were just based on the libertarian non-aggression principle. So the essence of libertarianism with regard to the government is that government is best which governs least, and for the anarchist libertarians it's a government that governs not at all, because government is per se an invasive institution. So that would be the most radical vision of libertarianism, the anarcho-capitalist view. The next, less radical, would be what we call minarchism, or minimal government, or minimal government libertarianism. This is the view espoused by Ayn Rand. And she said government has only one role, and that's to protect persons and property against marauders. And for foreign bad guys, we've got an army to keep them off of us, and for local bad guys, we've got police, and to determine who the good guys and the bad guys are, we have courts, and that's it. And that's the only legitimate form of government. Now, most libertarians are not anarcho-libertarians, nor are they minarchists. They're more minimal government libertarians, where they certainly want to have armies, courts, and police for government. But they would also want to deal with public goods like I don't know, mosquito prevention, or having a safety net or something like that. But what unites all libertarians, I think, is a deep abiding suspicion of government and a reliance on free enterprise. Now, is libertarianism a part of the left or part of the right? I say it's neither. It's neither left nor right. It's a unique thing. It agrees with the right a little bit on economic freedom, economic liberty. It says that the free enterprise system is that system that gets us the most prosperity and the best way to end poverty. Because every act in the free enterprise system is mutually beneficial. If I buy this watch for $10, it must mean that I value the watch for more than $10, and it must mean that the guy who had the watch values the $10 more than the watch more than the $10. So we have mutual benefit, whether you're buying and selling, or bartering, working for someone. If I work for someone for $10 an hour, it must mean that I value the $10 more than the leisure foregone, and it must mean that he values my productivity more than the $10 he pays me. So each and every aspect of the market is mutually beneficial. The way Bill Gates earned his money was by enriching other people, whereas the way other people get rich through crony capitalism, you have to distinguish laissez-faire capitalism from crony capitalism, where you have bailouts and favors and things like that, where you don't necessarily have any benefit. For example, what happened in Detroit with the big three bailing them out. The ethos of the market is if you can't provide goods and services that people want to buy, well, then you have to go broke and go bankrupt and provide some other services. I would say libertarianism is equidistant from the left, liberals, and equidistant from the right, conservatives. We agree with them on some things and disagree with them on other things. On economics, the Republicans or the conservatives are a little bit teachy, a little bit better. And on civil liberties, personal liberties, the left is a little bit better. For example, libertarians and leftists usually agree on victimless crime, legalizing prostitution, pornography, drugs, what have you, anything between consenting adults. And with the right, libertarians agree a little bit more that we should have free enterprise and private property rights. And on the third stool, or the third leg of the chair, the stool of what political economy is all about, foreign policy, here libertarians pretty much don't agree with either of those two parties. We now have, the U.S. has, what is it, about 800 military bases in about 150 countries, and only about 200 countries. And they have the nerve to call that defense. That doesn't seem like defense to most libertarians. Imagine if any other country did that. Suppose China or Indonesia or Brazil had soldiers in the U.S. marching around, and soldiers in many, many other countries, and they said, oh, it's just defense. Well, you know, the Hornets are going to start playing basketball soon, and we're going to go down there and watch them. And when the other team has got the ball, everyone yells defense, defense. And we can distinguish defense from offense in basketball, but somehow we can't distinguish this in foreign policy, which is highly problematic. A lot of political scientists have this spectrum, either you're left or you're right, and libertarians really don't fit in that category. We're a unique kind of philosophy. Now, I would like to address a few issues in greater detail, and one of them would be drug legalization. Drug legalization, or drug prohibition, I should say, is an astoundingly racist policy. It was the Narcotics Act of 1917 that started us all off in this wrong path. And this was an anti-Chinese measure. We noticed that the Chinese had opium dens, and we weren't, the powers that be, weren't powerful enough to do any more damage to them, but say, well, you can't have opium dens, and we're going to throw you in jail for doing that. Well, this was an act between consenting adults, and they had every right to do it. And nowadays, the people who lose out most from the drug laws are black people. Black people, young black men are shooting each other over these things. The prohibition of alcohol in the mid part of the last century somehow focused on Italian Americans, and they were shooting each other. This is just a horrible kind of a law. The reason that we have these problems is not because of the drugs themselves, it's because of the prohibition. The prohibition drives the price very, very high, and then there are vast profits to be made, and people don't want to get chump change, so they go for the drug running or drug using or what have you. And the police have got more guns than them, and a lot of them die. If I were head of the leader of the black community and young members of my community were dying like flies, I would start to rethink this and say, hey, maybe we should legalize these drugs, because that would take a lot of the profits out of it. And if the profits are out of it, then, I mean, nobody shoots anybody anymore over alcohol. And yet when alcohol is prohibited, people are shooting each other over that. We're never going to win the drug war, because every time we, the police, win the drug war, we interdict the shipment. Let's say we catch a ton of marijuana and we burn it. Well, for those of you that are into the boring subject, I'll get you for that, economics, you know that this is a shift to the left of the supply curve, which raises the prices. So every time they seem to win a battle in the drug war, what they do is they put more profits in it, and if there are more profits in it, then the drug people are becoming even more powerful. In Mexico, the drug gangs fight the government on almost equal terms. There's a lot of graft and corruption in this. And then there's also the thing with AIDS. They share needles. This isn't so much with marijuana, but with other drugs. And this helps exacerbate the AIDS issue. So libertarians, I think, are united about that. The saying is, if you get 10 libertarians in a room, you'll get 11 different opinions on most things. like herding cats, you can't do it. But I think on this issue, libertarians are very much of the same view. I want to address two different groups. One group of libertarians sometimes says you shouldn't vote at all. Why shouldn't you vote? Because the government is evil, and if you vote, you're having connection with the government, and therefore this is improper. Well, you know, they say don't vote, it just encourages them. The problem is that the government is so intertwined in our lives nowadays, it's very hard to ignore the government. Most of us came here on public roads. Well, those are government roads. So if you're really serious about ignoring the government or not having anything to do with the government, you shouldn't use the roads. And if you don't use the roads, it's really hard to get anywhere. One of my recent books is on privatizing roads. My motto is, if it moves, privatize it. If it doesn't move, privatize it. And since everything either moves or doesn't move, you privatize everything, including the roads. And this is a radical view that most libertarians would agree, perhaps, with. But do you know that there are 40,000 people here who die on the socialist highways? 40,000. Only 3,000 died in 9/11. Only 1,900 died in Katrina, which was the fault of the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA. Between them, they killed 1,900 people. And the problem is they're still in business, whereas any private company that did something like that would long have disappeared from business. So we are intertwined with the government in many, many ways, and if you want to not vote because it encourages them or it's statism or what have you, you want to be consistent with it. You can't use the roads, you can't use currency, you can't use libraries, you can't even eat food because they subsidize food. So no matter what we do, we're enmeshed in the government. It's sort of like a fly in a spider web. We can't get out of it unless we either commit suicide or want to be hermits somewhere off on some acreage somewhere. So I would say that the people who are against voting are very highly problematic from the libertarian point of view. There is nothing immoral to say about voting. It doesn't violate the non-aggression axiom, and therefore I think the argument against voting is highly problematic. The second group I want to address is the Ron Paul supporters. Now, when Ron Paul comes to the college campus, I invited him to Loyola. Oh, by the way, I have a list of about 900 people on my email list, and I notify them about libertarian events. If you want me to put you on my list, write out your email address and give it to me after the Judge Jim Gray's talk, and I'll put you on the list to notify you about events such as this. The second group I want to address is Ron Paul supporters. Unfortunately, Ron Paul has not supported the Gary Johnson, Jim Gray ticket. I think if he did, it would be very good. People say that you're going to waste your vote if you vote for the libertarian ticket. Well, I don't think you're wasting your vote because Obama and Romney are sort of Tweedledee and Tweedledummer or Tweedle something or other. You see these debates, I mean, I try to watch it, and I really got sick to my stomach. I'm just, I'm not that strong. Really disgusting how similar they are on just about everything. They both agree on bailout, they both agree on the Afghan war. They're certainly not for legalizing drugs or anything like that. I now have the honor and the privilege and pleasure of introducing who, if there were justice in the world, would be the next Vice President of the United States. Jim Gray is a judge, former judge. He was a jurist, the 2012 Libertarian Vice Presidential nominee. He was the presiding judge of the Superior Court of Orange County, California, and the 2004 Libertarian Party candidate for the U.S. Senate in California. Let's have a warm welcome for Judge Jim Gray.